The sea was black with smoke before dawn. Waves slammed against steel landing craft as engines roared through the freezing water of the English Channel. Ahead, hidden behind concrete bunkers and tangled barbed wire, German machine guns waited for the invasion to begin. June 6th, 1944. Omaha Beach, one of the deadliest battlefields in modern history. But this time, history changes, because alongside the US Army Rangers stood something no German soldier could have imagined. Vikings. Longships cut through the mist beside American destroyers, their dragon-headed bows crashing through rough water. Shields lined their wooden hulls while warriors in chainmail gripped axes stained from countless battles across Europe centuries before. The impossible had happened. Through some unexplained twist in time, thousands of Viking raiders from the height of the Norse Age had arrived on the eve of D-Day. At first, the Allied commanders thought it was madness. The Vikings had never seen tanks, aircraft, radios, or machine guns. They fought with axes, swords, and spears. But when the Rangers watched them train, they realized something terrifying. These warriors feared absolutely nothing. The night before the invasion, American troops cleaned rifles and checked ammunition in silence. Nearby, Viking warriors sat around roaring fires, sharpening axes against stones while chanting ancient war songs into the cold wind. Some Rangers couldn't understand them, but they didn't need to. The meaning was clear. Tomorrow was battle. As dawn approached, hundreds of landing crafts surged toward Omaha Beach. Battleships opened fire first, launching massive shells into German defenses. Explosions shook the cliffs. Bombers screamed overhead, dropping payloads onto bunkers hidden in the hills. Yet many German positions survived. Machine guns remained ready. The first Rangers lowered their ramps into chaos. Bullets tore through the surf instantly. Men fell before even reaching the water. German MG-42s hammered the beach with terrifying speed, cutting entire lines apart. The tide turned red within minutes, but then the Vikings hit the shore. Instead of hesitating under fire, they charged directly into it. War horns echoed across Omaha Beach as Viking warriors leapt from longships into waist-deep water, holding shields above their heads. Bullets smashed through wood and iron, but they kept moving. Screaming battle cries in Old Norse, they stormed toward the seawall with axes raised high. German soldiers froze in disbelief. At first, many thought they were hallucinating through the smoke. Medieval warriors charging beside American soldiers couldn't possibly be real. But confusion turned into panic as Vikings reached the first defensive lines. Unlike modern infantry, the Vikings fought like predators at close range. They scaled obstacles with brutal speed, hacking through barbed wire using axes while Rangers provided covering fire with M1 Garans and Browning machine guns. The combination became horrifyingly effective. The Rangers suppressed bunkers from a distance. The Vikings finished them up close. One German machine gun nest held down an entire section of beach for nearly 20 minutes. Every attempt to advance ended in disaster. Then a group of Viking berserkers charged straight through the gunfire. Two were cut down instantly, but the others slammed into the bunker entrance before the Germans could react. Seconds later, the machine gun went silent. American troops stared in shock as smoke poured from the bunker doorway. The Vikings emerged covered in sand, blood, and ash, and they kept advancing. Further inland, German officers struggled to understand what they were fighting. Reports flooded command posts describing barbarian shock troops attacking trenches with axes and shields. Some commanders dismissed the reports as battlefield hysteria. Others realized morale was collapsing because the Vikings brought something even more dangerous than brute force: fear. The German defenders had trained to fight soldiers using predictable tactics: rifles, grenades, artillery. But the Vikings fought with terrifying aggression that shattered nerves. They didn't retreat under machine gun fire. They didn't stop after casualties. They climbed cliffs under explosions while screaming war chants that echoed through the smoke. At Pointe de Hoc, the Rangers faced steep cliffs defended by heavily fortified German artillery positions. Historically, they used ropes and ladders under intense fire to scale the cliffs. But with Viking warriors beside them, the assault became even more savage. As Rangers fired upward to suppress defenders, Vikings climbed the rock face carrying axes in their teeth and shields strapped to their backs. German soldiers pushed ladders away and dropped grenades down the cliffs, but the attackers kept coming. One Viking warrior reportedly reached the top despite being wounded multiple times. The moment he climbed over the edge, he charged directly into the German trench lines, swinging a two-handed axe. Rangers followed immediately behind him, overwhelming the defences within minutes. The cliffs fell far faster than expected. News spread rapidly across Allied lines. Soldiers whispered unbelievable stories over radios and field telephones, ancient warriors storming Nazi bunkers, axes against machine guns, longships beside destroyers. Some thought it sounded absurd, others called it a miracle. But the Vikings paid a terrible price. Modern warfare was unlike anything they had ever known. Artillery obliterated entire formations instantly. Machine guns tore through shields like paper. Mortars exploded with terrifying force. Many Viking warriors who charged fearlessly onto Omaha Beach never even reached the sand. Yet even in death, they inspired the Allied troops around them. Rangers who had been pinned down for hours suddenly found the courage to move again after watching Viking warriors charge impossible positions. Officers later admitted the sheer ferocity of the Norse fighters reignited momentum during the darkest moments of the invasion. By midday, cracks began forming in the German defences. Bunkers fell one by one. Trenches were cleared. Defensive lines collapsed. American tanks finally pushed inland as Rangers and Vikings fought side by side through shattered fortifications. The beach that had nearly become a massacre slowly transformed into a foothold for liberation. German commanders now faced a nightmare scenario. The invasion itself was already massive, but the psychological effect of the Vikings created total confusion. Rumours spread wildly among defenders that the Allies had unleashed some kind of unstoppable elite force. Some units abandoned positions early, fearing close combat against the axe-wielding warriors charging through artillery fire. By nightfall, Omaha Beach belonged to the Allies. Fires burned across the coastline while medics treated thousands of wounded beneath darkening skies. Rangers sat exhausted beside Viking warriors who cleaned blood from battered axes beside wrecked landing craft. Neither side fully understood the other's language, but they understood survival. For the Vikings, the modern world was beyond comprehension. Giant steel birds ruled the skies. Floating fortresses fired shells larger than anything they had ever seen. Weapons killed from impossible distances. Yet they had fought in the greatest battle of the modern age and earned the respect of some of America's toughest soldiers. For the Rangers, the Vikings became legends overnight. Stories spread throughout Europe of ghostly Norse warriors appearing on D-Day to fight the Nazis. German propaganda officials desperately tried to suppress the rumours, fearing the impact on morale. But soldiers continued whispering about giant axe-wielding fighters storming bunkers through machine gun fire, and the legend only grew. As Allied forces pushed deeper into France, Viking units adapted surprisingly fast. Rangers taught them basic firearm use, while the Norse warriors shared brutal close-quarters combat tactics. Soon, strange hybrid units emerged, American soldiers with modern rifles advancing beside Viking shield walls. The Germans had no answer for it. Urban fighting became especially deadly. In narrow streets and ruined buildings, Viking warriors excelled. They ambushed German patrols with terrifying speed, using axes and swords in brutal close combat where rifles became difficult to maneuver. Entire enemy squads vanished in nighttime raids that felt more like medieval warfare than World War II. Even elite German units feared them. But despite their battlefield success, the Vikings struggled with the modern world around them. Hospitals, radios, tanks, and airplanes seemed like magic. Many could not comprehend the scale of the war. To them, this wasn't merely another kingdom fighting for land. It was Ragnarok, a battle consuming the entire world. As the Allies advanced toward Germany, Viking casualties continued mounting. Their courage was unmatched, but modern weapons remained devastating. Every victory came at enormous cost. Slowly, the number of surviving Norse warriors began shrinking, yet they never stopped fighting. During the final push into Germany, one combined Ranger Viking unit reportedly captured an entire fortified town after launching a night assault during a snowstorm. German survivors later described hearing war horns echo through the streets moments before axes crashed through doors and windows. By 1945, the war in Europe finally ended. Berlin fell. Nazi Germany surrendered. And the surviving Vikings stood among Allied troops, witnessing the collapse of one of history's darkest regimes. No one truly knew what would happen next. Some believed the Vikings would never be able to adapt to modern civilization. Others thought they would become symbols of warrior culture unlike anything the world had ever seen. But one thing was certain. The storming of Omaha Beach would never be remembered the same way again. Because on that bloody shore, where machine guns tore through the dawn and the fate of Europe hung by a thread, history witnessed something impossible. US Rangers and Viking warriors fighting side by side against the forces of Nazi Germany. And for one violent day on the beaches of Normandy, the old world and the modern world went to war together.